So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Irving Arts Center's Lunch and Learn. My name is Marcy Inman. I'm Director of Exhibitions and Educational Programs here at the Irving Arts Center. Our guest speaker for today's program is a young artist, Diya Hegde, whose work is featured in the solo exhibition Reclamation, Paintings by Diya Hegde, currently in the Arts Center's Courtyard Gallery, right outside these doors, and it's up through March 16th. We are recording today's presentation, and Diya's talk will be available to view on the Arts Center's YouTube channel in the next 2 weeks or so. As always, there is time allotted for Q&A after her talk. Please raise your hand to speak, and a microphone will be passed to you. The microphone is necessary so we can capture the audio of all your comments and questions for the recording. Diya is a high school senior at the Hockaday School in Dallas and an active volunteer at the Irving Arts Center, where she serves as a teen ambassador. She describes herself as an intersectional feminist, Indian immigrant, dedicated to sparking change in the world through her visual art and advocacy. Her artwork reflects her sense of identity as an Indian American, and she is inspired by social issues such as voter, immigrant, racial, and gender equality. So it is in part a happy accident and very appropriate that we acknowledge and celebrate Diya's accomplishments during this particular month of March, as we observe a confluence of National Youth Art Month, Texas History Month, and Women's History Month, and International Women's Day on the 8th, as well as voting for the Texas primaries taking place right here and now, with the Arts Center as a polling location. At 18, Diya is one of the youngest artists to ever have a one-person exhibition here, and to be able to amplify her voice through our Lunch and Learn program, for her to share information and insight about her art and her life and experience is such an honor. So please join me in giving a very warm welcome for Diya Hegde.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm really excited to be here. Thank you all for coming. We have a very special guest, Ms. Huckle, my 5th grade elementary school art teacher who has really changed my life, is here. So I'm really excited to be speaking to all of you and showing you my work. Thank you once again for coming. I figured that the best way to understand who I am and the meaning behind all my artwork is to understand the things that I love and hold dearest to my heart. I wanted to start by mentioning how much nature inspires me. These 2 pictures are in Zion National Park in Utah. The next photo is in Clearwater, Florida, and the last photo is in India. And this down here is in Sedona, Arizona. I feel like the natural world and painting art that depicts nature and leaves and scenery and trees really helps me feel connected with the earth. And I often go out in nature and sit in my backyard if I can't go somewhere scenic, to find inspiration for my artwork and to draw inspiration from the animals and the trees around me. So in the bottom photo, you can see me like in the corner right there. And I had a burst of inspiration while in Sedona, Arizona at Horseshoe Bend Memorial. And I began working on like the inspiration for one of my art pieces, which is this one. It depicts a fisherman, and that's like a sea bass, like a trout. And so a lot of my works feature themes of ecofeminism, which is a concept that the degradation of the environment can be paralleled to sort of feminism and like the dominion of women. And so a lot of my works sort of look at this through an empowering lens. Like this piece is entitled The One That Got Away, and it's supposed to depict a fish escaping from the hands of a fisherman. And it's how women are able to sort of transcend the same sort of patriarchal domination. And the one on the right also represents similar concepts because you see the shrubbery transcending the fence. So I wanted to start with the piece on the right for this presentation, which is one of the ones featured in this exhibit because it represents something really important to me, which is my last name. So the exhibit title is Reclamation, and so my last name is Hegde, which means chief in Sanskrit, which is the language that my parents speak, which is the ancient language that our name is derived from. And chief means, obviously sort of implies like some sense of regality and power. But a common American misspelling that people do, and also like Word documents and PowerPoints do, is hedge. And hedge really means to confine, restrict, and constrain. And so this piece kind of explores that dichotomy where the fence represents the hedging of my identity, but both the natural world transcending and also the red bar, which is sort of a facetious nod to the red underline underneath my name, is meant to represent me transcending that through this exhibit. So I wanted to begin with that. And I can go into more detail about the symbolism and imagery. I think this piece comes up again later. But that is the central tenet, and that's kind of what the rest of this exhibit kind of branches off for. And also this piece on the right is really what began my painting technique. I like to think of my approach to painting as more so sculpting rather than painting. I use really thick layers of paint, and I use it to shape, like, I use it to really create forms on the canvas rather than simply like portraying what I see. And so one of my art teachers described my painting as like jabbing and slashing and stabbing at like canvases. And I really think that that's an energy that I love to channel whenever I'm painting. And also, fun fact about this piece, I was looking at it on Facebook and someone got it tattooed recently, which is super cool. This is another thing that I love. I really love theater. I've been in a lot of shows beginning in middle school, such as The Lion King, Aladdin, a lot of Disney shows. And I actually have this thing called synesthesia, which is where I see colors whenever I hear sounds. And that one specifically is called chromesthesia. And so whenever I'm performing, I see like flashes of colors like in my peripheral vision. And that really inspires me sometimes because it's so beautiful. And it really reminds me of how music can connect people just in the same way that art does. So this piece on the bottom is inspired by two of my very favorite musicals. It's not a part of the exhibit. It's a charcoal painting. And the one on the right is inspired by Phantom of the Opera, which has like this iconic chandelier crash in the middle. And so these represent the glass shards. And the one on the left is inspired by Beetlejuice, which is the musical up there that me and my sister and my whole family went and we saw. And so I was really inspired by, I was looking into like how the trapdoors, how people are able to like teleport across the stage. There's like a lot of good stage mechanics that happen during the show. And so all of the red boxes kind of are a nod to those trapdoors. And so I incorporated some colors to sort of represent the colors I experienced whenever I was listening to those like musical soundtracks while I was working on these paintings. So there were a lot of like reds and warm tones in Phantom of the Opera, which not everyone might agree with, but that's just how I interpreted that. And then Beetlejuice, of course, on the right was more cool toned and more sort of aggressive in my eyes. And so theater is like a really big influence on me. And I would say that like almost all of my pieces, there's some element of the synesthesia that I try to incorporate. And whether it's like in this painting, like I use more like subtle color tones like down at the bottom, the music I'm listening to always finds its way to my artworks in some way, shape, or form. I'm also very inspired by collective action. And I'd say this is one of my biggest muses. Because just as within the realm of like social justice and politics, you see people in like individual people coming together for like protests, and like every one person, like you don't make a difference on your own. But whenever a bunch of people come together, it really makes a difference. And so I would encourage you all to vote across the hall if you have the chance afterwards, because that is also an instance of collective action at work. And so one way I've been able to do that is through the creation of murals. These were actually displayed at the Irving Arts Center, and I think they're in one of the classrooms, if I'm not mistaken right now. And so it kind of represents like all the color and everything that the Teen Ambassadors put these together. And it was really fun to sort of like watch this project come to life and make a lot of friends who are so passionate about art at the same level that I am. And then the one on the right is another mural that I worked on at an elementary school in Dallas with a group of my other friends. And the same thing, I saw the same sort of magical coming together of people, and it was such a compelling experience. I'm also inspired by politics and social justice, as Marcy mentioned in her wonderful introduction for me. This image on the right is me competing at the International Public Policy Forum in debate. I compete quite a bit. I'm currently serving on like the state debate team, and so a lot of my weekends are spent doing debate tournaments and learning so much about a bunch of new social justice issues and testing out ideas in a competitive setting. The one on the bottom is youth in government, which was in 8th grade, and this is kind of what began it all because this began my passion for immigration justice because I had met I had met a delegate there who had been deported with his family. And so then I realized that the immigration crisis is very complex. Like I have my own immigration story, but there are so many different stories and there's so much that has to be changed. So that sort of really augmented that's kind of what began it all and kind of began my own desire to express my own story through my portfolio and my body of work. And then this one on the top left is with Congresswoman Beth Van Dyne. We have very different political views, but I've learned so much from her, like in being on our youth advisory council. One part of politics that a lot of people don't like is how divisive it is and how people feel as though they can't sort of cross the aisle and come to a consensus. So this was my trying to come up with bipartisan solutions and learn more about the other side and learn more about how we can collaborate. And we ended up collaborating on issues of immigration, the fentanyl crisis, and a lot of like foreign relation issues. And so these really debate and advocacy is really what inspired a lot of the messages and meanings behind my work, as well as like rooted in my own personal experiences, as well as the experiences of the people I've met sort of along the way at these tournaments. And this kind of leads me to my artistic inspirations. I'm really inspired by these two artists, Banksy and Shepard Fairey. And particularly, I think that protest art is something that's very important to me. The Irving Arts Center Teen Ambassadors hosted a Black History Month Arts for Social Change exhibit last year, or Arts for Social Change workshop last year. And there we kind of talked about how art has really been a force for unity, but also a force for making a difference and taking a stand on issues that are important to you. And so I love how much nuance there are to these pieces. This piece by Banksy is meant to sort of protest, I believe it was like leading up to some major sports game. And it's meant to protest sort of the child labor and the work that went into that. And the one on the right is sort of, I admire this painting a lot because it has like "We the People," which is like the lines from the Constitution. But whenever the Constitution was written, it wasn't meant to include women and people of color. And so this kind of broadens that definition and shows the world that Americans are diverse. And I really admire this. And I wanted to share a quote really quickly from a civil rights activist, James Baldwin, that I'm really inspired by, which is, "I love my country, which is why I criticize it." And that is a philosophy I truly believe in. I think that always looking at things through a critical eye and trying to understand ways that we can improve all together and move forward as a society, because everything is changing so rapidly, is very important to me. And I think that art like this has a very important role. So this sort of inspired like my future plans, like in college and beyond. I hope to be somebody who either runs for office but uses art as a big part of her campaign, to unite people and to show people who I am in a much more visceral way rather than just talking about these issues. Because I think art really hammers down the point and sort of evokes empathy from a lot of individuals. And so I'm really inspired by protest art. And then I'm also inspired, I like to read a lot, and I love reading dystopian literature. And sometimes whenever I have like a free moment, I like to like recreate the covers of ones that I find very beautiful. So this is my rendering of George Orwell's 1984. And the one thing I love about dystopian literature is it has like this clairvoyant tendency. Like if you want a crystal ball or an oracle of Delphi for yourself, pick up some Orwell or something from The Handmaid's Tale, or books like that are basically dystopian literature, because the authors, what they do is they synthesize their past, like historical events. For example, The Handmaid's Tale synthesizes a lot of the like Reagan era politics with like 1920s American plan, and combines it with like what the future might look like. And so a lot of these trends, like, and a lot of the themes covered in these novels hold true today. And so this sort of clairvoyant quality is really what inspires my art. And it really showed me that in order for art to be truly timeless, and it sort of helped me broaden my scope whenever I was thinking about my own art, to make art that is personal to me, but also that with themes that could sort of be cross-applied to other people's life stories and things that could inspire other people and that would impact generations beyond me. Finally, the last thing that I really hold near and dear to my heart and that has impacted my art is my culture and my heritage. And so this is every year up until 2020, up until COVID, we would have a ceremony which is called Ganesh Chaturthi, which is celebrating the Hindu god of knowledge. And I would create a sculpture every year to sort of commemorate this event. And so this is kind of like a depiction of my heritage and how I've sort of expressed that in my art. And so there's an elephant motif in a couple of my paintings. And I also incorporated other designs that are related to my culture, such as henna/mehendi patterns on my hands, as well as rangoli designs, which is like a powder that you put in front of your doorstep. And so these are all designs, and there's also like paisley patterns and a bunch of different patterns that I will talk about more in my work that are a reflection of my heritage. But this is kind of where it all began, with these Ganesha statues that I would create every year. Now on to my process and my meaning behind a lot of my works. I wanted to talk a little bit about my painting process technique-wise before I got into the way I kind of approach my artwork. I use oil paint. That's my primary medium of choice. I've also experimented with like a lot of drawing and several other mediums to sort of expand my horizons, but all of it is in relation to how can I transfer this to oil paint. Like, for example, like the drawing skills I gain and like the cross hatching kind of helps me think about like the technique that I want to use with my brush to create like a new sense of texture and something really different and more spontaneous that you can only get with drawing. And it helps me gain those transferable skills. With my oil painting techniques, I really am inspired by this artist. His name is Lucian Freud, and he uses a very a thick painting technique with like his portraits, where he uses it as like a sculpting medium. And I really liked how he kind of pushes the boundaries of oil painting and kind of what is expected of the medium. Rather than trying to portray an image, he's literally trying to sculpt the image. So that's something that I've tried to do with a lot of my works. And then I mentioned the theme of Hegde/hedge at the beginning of this. And parallel to this journey of artistry, I've been exploring some of my family history. This is my grandmother's grandfather, so I believe 4 generations ago. And he was a chief of a small suburb in India, and that's where we get our last name from, Hegde. He was assassinated in our family, and nobody knows why. And I think that it's such an interesting story, and I have been trying to explore more and learn more about like my family history through the process of art and through like my own research, because like politics is obviously like a career that I'm interested in pursuing as I get older, and I wanted to know more about his story and see like what I could learn from his experiences. So this random fact created like it wreaked havoc on my life. It created some confusion about my family history, but I found it very like intriguing as to how like there's like royalty in my bloodline. So a lot of my paintings have alternative titles that sort of touch on this theme of royalty, and paralleling it with like the Western definition of a royal versus like the Eastern definition of what it means to be royalty. And so I'll touch on that a little bit in the future. The future is here. This is a poem that I wrote regarding my last name. And this is kind of like the turning point of my body of work as well. I can recite this very quickly. G before D, Hegde means chief, hedge means confine. Neither is completely true. Today is my coronation. It came too soon. My loved ones surround me. I wonder if they can see me. A, B, C, D. American-born confused they see. Supposedly I am one. The downfall of the dynasty. The induction candles are lit, and my heart is ablaze. The eyes of many burn through my forehead. I know who I am, but do they? My family name implied regality, but in America it is a red underline. I forcefully blow out a candle, but whispers of smoke remain. Their red underline slices through the chain link of my throne. Should I accept the crown? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Hegde. I'm merely another day of the week, but an important one. So this poem touches on a lot of the pieces that that are a part of the exhibit. I have a piece titled ABCD. You may recognize the red underline from the piece that I showed you at the beginning regarding ecofeminism. And then there's a couple of pieces that are coming up that are more about like coronation, sort of that kind of motif. And so I thought that this would be a good way to sort of introduce the meaning behind a lot of the works. And then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Hegde, that's like a thing that my family uses to get people to learn our last name. So I thought it was fun to include that in. But yeah, this is the turning point. This is the reclamation of my name. The decision that yes, I could be another day of the week, but it's an important one. So I'm really inspired by this author named Sandra Cisneros, and she writes her stories in the form of vignettes, which are basically really short tidbits of life, basically. And a lot of them explore this theme of borderlands, which is like you're not here nor are you there, and you're kind of exploring like the middle ground. And so I really resonated with her works when I read it last year. And so I thought that it would be good context for my art as well. And they have this really interesting mnemonic for her name, which is the main character, Esperanza. A lot of people are not able to pronounce her name, and so she laments about that, and she says, I wish my name was ZZDX instead of Esperanza. And I thought that it was really interesting because it sounds like a superhero name, like Z's and X's. Those are like letters you see in like math problems, not necessarily names, usually. And so I found it very compelling how she explored sort of naming as a way for people to sort of claim their identity, but also as a way that people are sort of undermined. And so I think that these themes really ring true in my exhibit. And so I'll be drawing parallels through to Sandra Cisneros' works throughout my portfolio. This is the painting that many of you may have seen when you were walking in. This was a photograph for the painting is this one, but this was a photograph taken sophomore year during my Sweet 16, during my birthday party. I had switched to a new school in 9th grade, and I had trouble making friends freshman year. And this was sort of like the moment when I realized like I have people around me who are very like-minded, and I go to an all-girls school, so this also kind of represents like femininity and that sort of in-betweenness because it's a Sweet 16 birthday party. And so from there, I made it into this painting on a piece of paper. It's about like 2 feet long, not too bad. And I included the poem that I recited earlier. It was for an English project, my junior year of high school. And so this has really been like a 3-year project because I created the oil painting this past summer. And so here in the bottom one, I included the purple and red surrounding my figure to represent both the Western and Eastern sides of my identity, because red is more of a symbol of royalty in Eastern cultures, whereas purple is a symbol of royalty in obviously like Europe and England. And so I wanted to talk about how I really align myself with both of those identities. And so both of these images and paintings evolved into this eventually. My Sweet 16 painting, ta-da! For this painting, I used a single brush for the entire piece. It was like an artist's loft round brush that was about this big, and I only used one brush, and I didn't wash it unless I was like done for the day, because I really wanted to push myself to like be strategic about this painting. So I started with like the light colors in the back, and then kind of worked up to all the darker colors towards the middle. And I had to learn how to sort of manipulate the brush and turn it in different ways to ensure that there's sort of different colors that are like appearing to the front. So at the end of the day, when I'd like wash my brush, like there would be like 10 or 20 different colors that would like come out of it. And so you can kind of see like whispers of pink up here, and like from cross contamination from like her outfit, or like cool colors being mixed into warms. And so I really wanted to embrace sort of the fluidity and the uncertainty that comes with oil painting that can be anticipated. And so the squares around this piece sort of represent like portals to alternative universes. And because I found this idea very compelling, because I this was a surrealist and cubist piece, because you can kind of see multiple angles of it without, like, this is like the front of the room and that's the back of the room. So I wanted to sort of incorporate like some sort of sci-fi element and something to make it a little bit more interesting. So I decided to create these portals to sort of further the theme of like the in-betweenness of girlhood and womanhood. I was telling Miss Cindy earlier, like if I had to describe the way I feel right now, it would be like a butterfly that is sort of emerged from the cocoon, but I still have like the mucus on my wings that have to dry out before I can truly fly away. And so I think that this piece kind of represents that within the Sweet 16, within that sort of context, because it's a big milestone. I showed this piece to someone actually, and in the background, like I told them what it represented, and so they mentioned that like the next big female milestone was something to the effect of like, your next big milestone is going to be your wedding or something like that. And so I tried to make a little facetious like statement about that by incorporating both of these designs. They're actually taken from a henna pattern that one of my cousins had at her wedding, because that, like, as a part of wedding rituals, people put henna on their hands, and so I wanted to incorporate that in the piece, sort of to show like, oh no, like that's what's coming, that's the only thing girls have to look forward to, when in reality that's not really true, and we have very bright futures ahead of us, all of us. I also wanted to talk about another piece that is really inspired by the woman life freedom movement. This past piece is also really inspired by the woman life freedom movement. Ask Miss Marcy and Miss Cindy. I would ask about this exhibit so much. They sent me so many resources about it, and it was really an exhibit that resonated with me. When I toured it, I was like I was really drawn to this like middle piece, which is essentially a woman wiping off her makeup to reveal her bruises. And like whenever like I went home for a week after that, and every time I closed my eyes, I was like imagining that, and I was like, I had a very visceral response to it. And it really like enlightened me of an issue that I really didn't know about, because I kind of, I mentioned that I go to an all-girls school, and there it's a very like empowering environment for women. And I really took it for granted until I realized that there's like women out there who are being arrested for showing their hair. And so this was another graphic from the Clooney Foundation of Justice that I found on Instagram that says hair is not a crime. And I thought it was a very powerful visual as well. And then this graphic novel is Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi. And it's also a novel that really resonated with me. It's completely in black and white, and it has like a lot of photographs. And so it really juxtaposes the brightness and the energy of the main character's questions with sort of the grim nature of the storytelling. So this kind of impacted me quite a bit. I'd be listening to TED Talks about the women life freedom movement while working on like my friend Gracie's hair on the far right, or like I'd listen to a song that Coldplay made in honor of the women life freedom movement while painting my friend Avita's hair. And so it really like affected me, and I felt like this was something that not enough people were talking about and not enough people knew about. And so in order of that, I decided to, inspired by the Persepolis graphic novel, that's why I chose to make this henna design black and white, to sort of honor the loss of life that is occurring, and like the dominion that women are enduring in Iran currently. So yeah, thank you, Miss Marcy and Miss Cindy, for putting together such a wonderful and touching exhibit, which really impacted my works. The other thing that inspired me about the Women Life Freedom exhibit was how immersive all of those artworks were. There was like a black box that you could sit in. There was like a sculpture that looked like this tangled mess of hair. And of course, like this is a very visceral piece as well. And it sort of inspired me to take my art down the more like experiential route where you can have a piece that's so immersive, which is something that really inspired the scale of my paintings. Before this piece, like the biggest I'd gone up to was like 1/3 of it, like a 30 by 40 canvas. And so in stretching the boundaries of it and like adding 2 more 30 by 40 canvases and sort of bolting them all together, I really wanted to make this piece super immersive, that you could walk by for a few seconds and really like soak in the different aspects and like all of my friends and see what's truly happening in this piece. And then I also wanted to talk about a couple of another one of my pieces. This one's very exciting. I'd say the biggest thing I've learned in the past 2 years is to be experimental and try styles that are not necessarily yours. And so the way I've sort of embraced this is I really love like political cartoons, and we do this thing with the political advocacy group that I'm involved in, which is called Toon Tuesdays. And every Tuesday, like I send out a political cartoon that's related to a social justice issue of the time. And I noticed that like a lot of the ones that I'd send that are from like the 60s had this super interesting like retro like psychedelic style, like a lot of like the Vietnam War cartoons. And I really admired like the sort of like conception and how like abstract they were. And so I've tried to incorporate that like in this painting and also in a couple of others. And so that was like a new style that I sort of experimented with. And the other one, this piece on the right, I actually made it at an Irving Arts Center teen camp. And it was like a cave painting where we like glued sand on like a piece of wood, I believe. And then we started like making our own cave paintings with charcoal and different soft pastels. And it was such a fun experience. Like I had a lot of fun doing it. And it was something I had never thought of. Like I thought it was so creative and amazing. And so those two taken together. And then I also recently read this book called Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari in relation to the cave painting. It's a wonderful book. I highly recommend it. And he answered like a lot of the questions that I kind of had about humans and like how we've evolved to like be artists and have religion and like be such a social group. And so he talks about cave paintings as a means of like storytelling, and that's the takeaway from the book. That storytelling is what makes humans, as opposed to anything else. And so I think that both of these pieces like really inspired me, and they found their way onto a painting that's not featured in the exhibit, but I really like nonetheless, which is this painting on the right. First of all, the message of this slide is you can find inspiration anywhere. This is literally a bell pepper I ate in a salad like 2 years ago. And I noticed, like I was away at like a debate camp, and I sent a picture to my mom and I was like, this looks like the Om symbol. And she was really excited that I recognized the symbol. Basically, Om is a symbol that is very important in Hindu religious texts. And the sound that you make whenever you say Om, like Om, apparently that sound is the sound of the universe, like the reverberations, like that's the sound that the universe makes, and something to that effect. And so that's kind of like what this piece was. Like I incorporated a lot of like different elements, such as like the psychedelic colors from this piece, and I even tried to create like an elephant over here. It's hard to see, which was kind of in the style of like the cave paintings that we did at the Irving Arts Center that I was really inspired by. Like the political cartoons, of course, and like colors from like the cereal boxes I had. I included a lot of imagery relating to my culture, such as like Mysore Palace over here. And this is a Diya lamp, which is my namesake, actually. I was born on Diwali, which is a festival of lights, and that lamp sort of represents my birth. And so this piece was really like, it was really fun. Like I was just like playing around with paint, and it's not in this exhibit for a reason, which I will share soon. But basically what I did with this was I really got experimental. Like I took a paper towel roll and like I'd like paint like mountains and like a lot of nature, and then I'd smudge it completely with like paper towels. And like I'd move the paint around, and then I'd add new layers on top. And I really wasn't afraid to like do anything with this. And this really helped me snap out of like perfectionism. And so then this kind of reminded me, like the theme being India, of like a Hindu deity, which is Lord Shiva, who is known as the creator, protector, and destroyer. And so he wears snakes around him. And so I kind of touch upon the creator, protector, and destroyer thing because I'm like creating the piece, but then I'm also the one who's like smudging it with my like paper towels, and I don't know how I'd be protecting it if I'm destroying it. But creator and destroyer, that's kind of what I wanted to touch on that. And then also the motif of snakes in this piece, which represent the fearlessness and the power of the universe. And I wanted to sort of give it to a woman as sort of like an extension of myself to see like, this is like my art. This is like the piece that most represents who I am. But I had a really fascinating conversation about this piece with one of my Christian friends who personally interpreted the snakes as like a reference to like Genesis in the Garden of Eden. And I really love when people do that and bring their own personal interpretations to my piece, because I feel like it allows us to put different concepts and new ideas, in this case like two different religions, in conversation with one another and noticing like the similarities and differences, like similarities in principles, maybe differences in like the storytelling that we do around it. So it was a really fun experience, and I'd love to hear everybody's like thoughts on this eventually. But this piece is unfortunately not in the gallery because, as I am the creator and the destroyer, this is like the piece that I'm messing around with quite a bit. I'm doing a lot of wackier things with my art right now. Right now I'm thinking about taking the canvas like off the frame and turning it into a dress or like a skirt of some sort, just because, just to do something fun with it. And so, yeah, that's this piece, my bell pepper for my salad, and a lot of different ideas like synthesized onto one piece that is constantly an evolution. And I think this is one piece that I want to be continuing until like forever. Like I want to keep doing things to it and keep changing it and keep adding new things and bringing it new levels of meaning as I grow older and my life moves on. But luckily, do not fret, that last piece has a sister painting that is in the exhibit, featuring another Bharatanatyam dancer. And that's something I forgot to mention. Bharatanatyam is the dance form featured in both of these paintings. And a big principle of this dance form is it's very like evocative, and it's a very visual dance form, like where the dancers kind of like move their body in ways that represent tangible things. Like there's like a peacock pose, and like there's like a lot of different poses that people can do that really represent ideas, and it kind of touches on the idea of storytelling. And so I'm really inspired by the art form's ability to tell stories in such a unique and different way. This piece specifically is an ode to my hometown of Bangalore. It's a very chaotic piece, and that's intentional. I included like the map design, which is like the map of Bangalore, and then I tried to incorporate different elements of my my last time I visited India, like such as an elephant. Like I think we did an elephant ride one time when I was really young, and a lot of people in India like use motorcycles, including my grandfather. Like in the first nature picture slide, I put a picture of me riding on the back of his motorcycle. And then the car-looking thing on that side is known as a rickshaw, which is it's like the primary like mode of like, it's like the taxi of India. And it's so much fun because like you get to have like the sides be open, and you really get to like internalize and see the world around you. And so this other motif that you might notice in a lot of my paintings are these dots with eyes in the center. That's meant to represent the evil eye, which is a form of protection. And like different evil eye colors represent different things. But here it's kind of representing like the sunlight and like the light, because I wanted to incorporate like an aspect of my name, so that's why I chose to make the evil eye yellow. But if you notice, like a lot of the pupils, if you will, are like kind of flying away from the eye itself, and that kind of goes back to the chaos that I sometimes experience whenever I'm visiting my hometown, and sort of like the wavering protection of the evil eye that you might see. And so I just wanted to take a quick detour and talk a little bit about how drawing has impacted my painting style. I really think that I took a summer drawing class at Brookhaven College in 2023, and I really learned quite a lot about drawing from life, which is not something I've done before. A lot of my painting process would be like, oh, like I took this cool panorama of my Sweet 16. This would be a fun like painting idea, or I like a lot of it was based on like photographs, and so this really taught me to be like a lot more spontaneous. So I'd say really this piece and this piece kind of helped me break out of like perfectionism and explore like the heart of art, which in my opinion is trying new things um, and like pushing yourself, not necessarily getting attached to your works and being able to view them as like works that can constantly evolve and constantly change. And so these are like a bunch of drawings of my chair, like negative images. And then on the right, I did a lot of figure drawings, as you might see on the bottom. And it was a really interesting experience, especially since I'd been only doing oil painting for quite a while before I started. I dipped my toe in drawing. And then I wanted to talk about a self-portrait that I created, which is the Queen slash Maharani one, which is this one, which is featured in the exhibit. But I wanted to kind of talk about the journey to that piece, because portraiture was very difficult for me, both in terms of like making it look like me, but at the same time like being able to instill like my identity like in the pieces itself. Like it was hard to say like, yes, like this piece like shows me, but does it represent me? And so this was like one of the very first pieces, self-portraits that I did for a sophomore year health project. And COVID masks, like I felt like that was kind of a cop out from drawing the actual face. And then the second piece was on a 30 by 40 canvas. And this is the first time I tried drawing a self-portrait like at scale 1.5 years ago. And what I really loved about this piece was the hair and sort of like the messiness of it. Because one thing that a lot of young Indian girls sort of derive their power and also their insecurity from is their hair. And I'm sure like people in general as well, but this was something that was really like hits close to home for me, because I had like a lot of frizzy hair growing up, and my younger sister has like a head of curls. And so this was me kind of deriving power and finding beauty in that. So I used a really thin brush, and like I emphasized kind of like the delicate color application. And I think that it made the piece very dynamic and interesting. It's obviously like incomplete. I don't have eyebrows, but this piece was very experimental, and it kind of helped me view like one big insecurity of mine, like from childhood, in a different light, and see it as like a form of art and something that happens like very naturally to a lot of people. And so then this third picture is a pencil self-portrait, a drawing. And I kind of wanted to touch on like the science and technology behind, basically before I created this self-portrait, I watched like The Imitation Game with Benedict Cumberbatch. And it was about like this technology called Enigma, and how like, which eventually led to like modern AI and computing. And so I really was inspired by like how different technologies have shifted society. And I kind of wanted to explore like what the role of artists would be like in that future. So I included like different, I included like one of the Wright brothers like original plans, or I think it's a Leonardo da Vinci thing actually. And I wanted to like explore that sort of theme. And so I incorporated that in this piece as well as this one in the middle. This left piece was like, I started a portrait and it was cut off there, but then I kind of wanted to add like the shoulders, and so I cut out little pieces of paper just so I could have like a more complete portrait that really I felt represented myself, because I felt like whenever it cut off, whenever I was like within the box of the paper, it didn't seem sufficient. So I really wanted to add my own personal touch by adding like these little paper cutouts that are sort of featuring the rest of the piece. The middle one is kind of like developed from the far right one here. And then the far right one on this slide is a charcoal painting that I completed at my drawing class this summer, from life from a mirror. And that's the first time I've ever painted from a mirror. And then all of this kind of like ultimately led over the summer to my creation of this piece, which is a self-portrait entitled Queen/Maharani. It explores themes of anti-colonialism specifically. And this was what the piece looked like originally. And I talked to my art teacher about it, and he asked me a very like thought-provoking question. What made you choose purple for the background? And I was like, I like purple. Like, I don't know, like I saw like blue bonnets and lilacs outside, and I thought it was like, I thought blue and purple would like be a wonderful color combination. And then he kept pushing me a little bit further. He's like, but what does purple like represent to you? Like, do you know why you like it so much? Like, and he knew I was interested in politics. And so he was like, is this like a synthesis of like both of the American political parties? Like, what does this mean to you? And the more I thought about it, I was like, the number one like association with purple for me personally was regality and like the British crown. And so I kind of wanted to make this piece a little bit more like personal to me and like something that like I had been thinking about, which was like the sort of anti-colonialist narrative that you see like in a lot of my pieces. So I included these red boxes sort of on top that are a lot brighter than the purple. If you notice, the purple kind of looks like it's like fading and washing away, whereas the red boxes really stand out. And so that's kind of like another like era of reclamation. And then this like white sort of part on it, on top of the parallelogram, represents sort of like the colonialist past and how it kind of like impedes people, and it kind of creates a haze that's kind of in the way of my like vision. And so that's kind of why that's there. But it's also the same one that's on the very first piece that I showed you, the one of the fence. That's the same image that's overlaid on this one. So I think that they both sort of touch on the idea of colonialism. That one more in the context of like feminism and what it's like to be a female, but this one's more in the context of like what it means to be royalty and how that sort of affected me. These next pieces also represent how I try to put works in conversation with one another. This piece was created around the same time I created the one inspired by like the musicals. Same thing, like this one is the colors here are more so like representative of synesthesia and like the music that I had like listened to and kind of the flow that I got into. But the ones here and also this blue up here was inspired by thermal maps over the summer because I worked outside when I was doing this. And it was like 110 degrees. And I was like, what's going on with the weather these days? And so it's meant to sort of represent like climate change and how that's affecting our globe. And I really wanted it to be like visible. So when it began as like a black and white piece, I chose to add like these thermal colors to sort of point at that and demonstrate this. And then it also touches on the theme of status, like within my portfolio, as like these red boxes are sort of the stairway to high status and more ideas. But then the relationship between these pieces is actually like this part. It's like the same image that I kind of overlaid here and ended up painting. All of this is from this piece. And so that's another aspect of my process. I'd use Photoshop to kind of like overlay different elements of my pieces and like find like graphics that are from like images like in my camera roll to sort of like put them all together to create pieces. And like sometimes before I learned how to use Photoshop, I'd also like print out color images of my paintings and go in with like colored pencil or thin layers of acrylic paint to sort of add that in and just see what it would look like before I added it to my canvas. And so that really made that sort of risk-taking aspect of my works a little bit easier. So there I use like the same sort of painting techniques, the jabbing, stabbing, and slashing, inspired by Lucian Freud. This piece represents my birth. The original title of this was royal christening, which is the ceremony that royal babies do whenever they're born, like in the British crown, I believe. And so this kind of represents my birth. This is me, and that is sort of a Diya lamp, as I mentioned, the same kind of lamp, and it's coming straight from my grandmother. And her face is obstructed by the smoke from the lamp and the smoke from the fires. And that's meant to represent the sacrifices that the women before me have made for me to be like where I am now. And the flame to my head is kind of representing like how my name was decided like around Diwali. And the colors represent, I don't know, like the artistry that sort of was instilled in me from a young age, whether that was through creating rangoli designs on my front doorstep with the sand or adding henna patterns like this, like featured in this, painting those on my sister's hands. And so this really represents my start and my birth. And it takes elements from this as well as another panoramic image that I took a little while ago. And then another motif in my paintings is this idea of the liminal space, which is the sort of like in-betweenness that I'm trying to capture a little bit. And so liminal space is like a transient space where like an airport, for instance, where you're not in there for a long time. Nobody lives in an airport, but it's like a place that you pass through in your day-to-day. And so to quote The Great Gatsby, the liminal spaces that I feature in my art are meant to represent the within and without. So being a part of something and not being a part of something at the same time. So this piece in particular represents my feelings that like my family and a lot of immigrant families have to sanitize facets of our own identities, such as like your faith or like people have to change the way they speak to people in order to feel as though they fit in exchange for status and acceptance in our American community. And so the way it kind of relates to my personal family history was these two symbols are meant to represent the orb and scepter from like royalty. But the only way that we can accept the orb and scepter is if we accept the red bars that also confine us simultaneously. So this kind of explores the theme of Hegde Hedge, like the confinement and also simultaneous empowerment. And I think that this is also commentary about like the American dream kind of in general, where you're simultaneously like enchanted by possibilities, but you're repelled and you notice like systemic injustice happening. And so that was a dilemma that I was really reconciling, like dealing with like throughout high school as I worked in politics, where I was like, what does it mean to be like an American? Like, is this something that I want to be a part of? And then ultimately, as I showed at the beginning, I came to the realization that I love this country so much. And that's why I'm going to be critical of it. And that's why I'm going to continue to fight for social justice and political change. So this theme of within and without, in the sense of immigration, in the sense of girlhood and womanhood, in the sense of my family's personal history is also depicted in these. You can kind of see like the reflection of like a person taking a photograph here. And there's also like views of like inside my art studio, but then outside, like the view that you see like outside the window. And so these two pieces are also depictions of like the piece on the right or the left is the comparison of enlightenment and the Great Awakening, essentially, like the reason versus religion, and they're playing a game of chess. The anatomical model sort of represents like enlightenment and scientific thinking, whereas the Diya lamp represents religion. And like this is kind of like the dynamic between both of them. And they're playing like a game of chess or like some sort of board game that I wanted to remain a little bit ambiguous and not be like too on the money. But that's what that piece kind of represents. And then this piece, I did something very similar, like process-wise, where I overlaid the image of this, the anatomical model over here, in the same sort of like fiery colors that I derived from like the charcoal painting that I showed a few slides ago. And so this represents, and you can also see like the theme of the evil eye, which is meant to serve as protection. And so the important motif here is like the liminal spaces and like kind of being both in between and like within and without. And then this piece represents another social justice issue that is very crucial to me, which is happening in India, which is female infanticide, which is where babies are sort of like, girl babies are like left basically to like die. Because their parents wanted to have sons and stuff like that. And this doesn't happen, like, it's not a widespread practice, but when I heard about it, I was really shocked and I wanted to do something about it. And so a lot of my painting process, it's like I create these pieces and then I forget about them for a while. And then I get a bout of inspiration from an issue like this. And that sort of inspires me to sort of synthesize them together. So this began as two separate paintings, one depicting a parking garage and one depicting like after like some party was over, and like balloons were left on the ground, and there's like, I thought it was a very like sad sight, like when the balloons were like falling off the wall on the ground. And so this is meant to, I decided to like combine them and make them into a diptych with a baby in the middle coming from here. And so the little yellow box represents the light within her and the light within all people fundamentally. And I wanted to include like these colorful balloons all around. to represent, I was deciding whether I wanted to make the balloons pink because I made the balloons blue, and so I wanted to be kind of like a gender reveal party. But in Hindu scripture and like a lot of and even in like Native American cultures and like in a lot of non-Western cultures, they take a very fluid view of gender where it's not just female and male. And so I wanted to include like more colors. So I included some grays and like some oranges to sort of represent like the spectrum of gender. But this piece is essentially about like infanticide, and the reason why the baby faces that way is because she wants to be like in the womb rather than like exiting into the real world where the party is always going to be over, where people don't necessarily value like female children, like in a culture that practices infanticide at times. And then this piece is the last one that I haven't spoken about, which is in the exhibit. And it's also partially inspired by an Irving Arts Center experience. I began this piece in 2022, and this reference photo was taken the same day. Like we got into a minor hydroplaning car accident, me and my mother, and I realized that like the accident was caused because of the water on the ground, not because of either party doing anything wrong with their car. And so I started this painting, and it looked like this for a good year. And then last February of 2022, I believe, or no, 2023, there was the Art Uninterrupted Black History Month exhibit where I learned a lot about like the civil rights era, and I looked at a lot of their iconography. And like the Woman, Life, Freedom exhibit, I really went down a rabbit hole with this exhibit, and I loved like researching some of the artists that I saw. And so in my search, I learned about this concept called the model minority myth. And when I was researching this issue, I kind of approached it the same way I looked at the Women, Life, Freedom exhibit, where at first it started out as like, this is not an issue that affects me. This is like a different minority group that it impacts. But then I began to draw connections like through the model minority myth, and I began to see like how this is an issue that does impact me. And so essentially the model minority myth is where Black Americans and Asian Americans in like the 1960s, and it's continued in various different ways, were kind of pitted against one another because Asians were viewed as sort of like the model minority, and they used that like oppressors like sort of weaponized that idea. And so I realized that like the animosity that may like ring true today between minority groups, and this is also a theme that can be viewed like in the context of like India. Whenever the British colonized India, there was a lot of tensions that began between like Hindus and Muslims. It was always there, but it got a lot worse once India was colonized. And those tensions, and same thing with like like the Black Americans and Asian Americans in the United States, it's not a result of either one racial group. It's a result of like a broader system of oppression. And so that's kind of the metaphor there with like the water on the road being like the system of oppression, and the car accident that happened shortly after this was taken being the tensions between like different racial groups and ethnic groups. And this piece is called ABCD, which I mentioned stands for American Born Confused Desi, which is used as a derogatory term towards people who have been brought up in the United States. I was actually born in India, but like I've been called it by my cousins like in a joking way. And so that kind of represents like that kind of like in between, like you're confused about your identity. So that's why I called it that. But also I found the title ironic, like in relation to the minority myth, because ABCDs and like obviously like the colorful shapes that you see there are very like elementary things that you see like in classrooms like when you're really little. But the model minority states that like this certain racial group is smarter, or in some cases like so I thought it was very interesting to sort of juxtapose like the rudimentary nature of that, the ABCD acronym, with the model minority myth. And so this is one of my favorite pieces. I really like the colors in it. And I began by like, the ground was like very flat. And then after I developed my new painting style of like thick painting, I started with this. And this is another painting where I only used one brush, especially for like the bottom part. And it was really difficult to sort of not mix the yellows with all the other like grays and the dark colors. And so this is one of the stylistic choices that I made that I'm very proud of. So that's my portfolio. Thank you guys for coming, and I'm ready for some questions.
Let me get the microphone ready here so we can get on to our Q&A. Again, if you could just hold your hand up, and I'll get this to you, and please speak into the microphone. I'm not sure if I'm able to get this on correctly. Okay, here we go. Cindy, can you hear me? Okay, great. Again, this is for the recording, so if you wouldn't mind. Okay, any questions for Diya? I'm sure there's many. Okay, Quentin.
Hi, first of all, thank you for the detail of your artwork and essentially the detail of your life. My question is, you talked about listening to music as you're painting and it would create or form light patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Have you, other than the portals and the evil eye that I've seen in your paintings, have you ever actually attempted to draw or paint those visions that you see?
Actually, these paintings, I wish I put that on there, but the backgrounds for this painting and this painting, a lot of it was influenced by the synesthesia that I experienced and like the colors I would hear whenever I'd listen to soundtracks. And I tried to it's hard to capture because it moves, for me, in my brain, it moves very fast, like away from my eyes. And it's more so like on the peripheral. So it's always like, it's not like shapes that are moving necessarily, but it's more so like the colors that I feel. And so I always try to do that. And whenever I use my like one brush technique, sometimes like they blend together. And I find that like with music, it kind of does the same thing because you're seeing like one color kind of fade away while another one is coming in really strong. And so that's kind of why I began that one brush technique.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Comments? Okay.
I also was graduated from an all-girls high school, and I found it empowering. But when I went to college, to a co-ed university, I found it limiting.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find it limiting because you're very involved with the feminine side, but what about the other side?
That's a wonderful question. Thank you so much for asking. I feel like I've been able to, I feel like my life has been very balanced. Like art's been sort of like how I've expressed my feminine side, but through debate, I've had I'm on a team of all girls, but I've competed against teams of all boys. And this year when I'm competing with like Team Texas, I like my team is also very like mixed up. So I interact with a lot of different genders like through that experience. And I think going to an all-girls school kind of it is empowering, as you say, but I can see how it's like limiting at times because you're surrounded by only one perspective, which is the teenage female perspective. And so I find that like a lot of times there are like sort of echo chambers of like, we're just kind of like bouncing ideas off of one another and we all ultimately like agree and we come from like the same perspective and very similar backgrounds. And so the way I've tried to sort of transcend that, and like the Irving Arts Center has been such a huge part of that, where I've been able to be exposed to multitudes of perspectives of people like diametrically opposite from me through art and converse with people very different from me like on campaign trails.
Okay. Well, I have to be careful how many things I say to you right now because I'm such an emotional person that you're so, Tessa's going to laugh. I'm not a composed speaker like you by any means. And I just think it's so amazing to have seen you little and then, see this. It's very, very, very inspiring. But my question for you from a rational place that can get away from some of my feelings right now is how number one, do you manage time as a young person to allow the curiosity to come out of you to just dig into all these subjects that, you know, most people your age don't create time for that. So how do you create time for that? And then I have a second question after you answer that. So
Well, thank you so much for coming, Ms. Huckle. You're gonna make me cry too.
I have no control. I'm sorry.
No problem. I think that I've never, like, my parents tried to put me in a lot of things when I was little. Like, I tried like a bajillion sports, and like I did like dance and all sorts of things. And I only was drawn to a very like limited amount of things, and those things were art, theater, debate. And whenever I'm like passionate about something, I feel like I can do it for like hours, like forever. And so with art, like and it's not always like the healthiest approach, but I'd stay up till 4 a.m. like on school nights just working on a painting because I like had like a bout of passion and I just have to like finish something. And so that's kind of how I've been able to like kind of do that. And I'd say like the hardest part has been like managing the things I love to do with the things I have to do, and like the responsibilities I have. And I'm sure like as a high schooler, it doesn't compare to the responsibilities of adults, but the biggest thing I've had to manage is like schoolwork and like most recently like the college application process and thinking about like what like the future kind of holds for me. And so I've really tried to incorporate like the things I care about in like everything I do. Like in this was for a school project. It was just a creative writing project, and I was really stressed about it for a little while I was like working on this painting simultaneously. But then I realized that like these things can go to my artwork and be taken to my theater. And I'd say just like being, like you said, like curious and like I feel like just like wanting to know more. Like I feel like I don't know anything. I feel like there's a whole world of knowledge that I can like learn about. And I feel like I've only scratched the surface of the things that I hope to know by the time like I'm done here. And that is something that really excites me. Like there's things out there that are waiting for me that are like, that I couldn't have fathomed. Especially like with the leap year. Like I was like, what's like the next leap year gonna look like for me in 4 years?
That's wild. Your curiosity is really, really inspiring.
Thank you.
My other question was thinking about, you know, I think you evidenced that you're really curious, a lot of push and pull between worlds that don't totally go together. And you know, I'm thinking about just how wise you feel as a young person compared to, you know, that usually feels like an older generation thing. And like, I think there is wisdom of there's young wisdom and there's older wisdom. And I think in the political world, I think a lot of times those two worlds, you know, are butting heads. So what is one of your wishes for a generation like myself that doesn't have your young wisdom? What do you hope that what's like one thing you hope we would do to help the things that you want to see come true? Like maybe one of your wishes.
I would say learn people's stories. And there are these YouTube channels that I really like to watch, and I forget the name, but essentially like they do videos. I think one of them is called Soft White Underbelly, where they interview people who are like really like living on the edge of societies. Like one interviewed like an ex like Las Vegas stripper, people who are really, and people like who live in like these underground tunnels like in California, people who are really like on the edge of society, and like sort of people who, when you see them, you'd probably make like a lot of judgments towards. And they have such compelling, fascinating life stories. Like there's this one gentleman who's homeless, who began as like a Harvard like graduate, and like he was like in like the Wall Street banker or something like that. And he talked about like his life and like the wisdom that he gained like through his story. And I think just like I like the way I like to learn about people's stories is by consuming media, and like that YouTube channel really like helps me feel like I'm talking to these people myself. And so I think if more people like met people, whether it's on the internet or like and coming to events like this and like learning about other people's art and like their stories, I think that's a really wonderful way to do it.
Like that kind of sounds like inviting people in versus pushing them away, I think is
Absolutely.
Is a path. Yeah. I love it. Amazing.
Thank you so much.
Is there anyone else?
I was wondering about your symbolism with the lamp. It's in many of your pieces, and is it different in the various pieces, or is it symbolic the same in all of them?
Yeah. So the lamp and fire in general is, in a narcissistic way, meant to represent myself. And it's my way of kind of like inserting myself into all of these pieces. I take a lot of pride in like my name and like naming. And as I mentioned, like with like the Sandra Cisneros book, when I was younger, I also kind of wished to change my name to make it like easier to pronounce. Like I'd tell my mom, I was like, I wish you named me Dia, like drop the Y so that people wouldn't call me Daya. Stuff like that. And so my art, this is kind of me like finding power in my name. So the Hegde theme, as well as like my first name, that's kind of how my first name appears in all of it.
So it's symbolic of your name.
Of me, yes.
Yeah. The other question I have is your plan to incorporate art with politics. Do you have a plan for that?
Oh, I do. I could talk about this for forever. I think that organizations like the Irving Art Center, we need to have like so many more of them in every community, every city, every place. I think public art and like interactive art could really help shift societies. And at Disney World, I saw on like social media that they had like this big wall where people could come in and like paint a box. And so like mosaics like that, or like mosaics on the side of highways, things like that, wherever you see more art around you, I feel like that could really help unite people and create like communities that celebrate one another and celebrate art. There's this one organization in New York City called Public Color that I'm really inspired by. And it's like this woman who like basically paints like these, the schools there, a lot of the public schools look very like sanitized, and they're very like, the lighting is like hospital lighting, like the walls are very gray. And it's not conducive to like creativity and imagination and curiosity. And so what Public Color does is that they paint like a lot of those places like in all these like beautiful rainbow colors. And it's such a nice thing to see. And like they show like the reactions of the children there. And those kids are very like, you can see like a tangible difference in their like learning and how they like kind of soak in. So I'd say like politically, I'd want to like push for more like grants and stuff like that to fund these types of like public art projects. I can't run for president because I was born in India, but if I were to run for president, I'd want my campaign to be like a very visual campaign centered on the stories of Americans. And I wouldn't want it to be like partisan. I would want it to show like and showcase like different people's and like, ideas and like different people's backgrounds and where they come from and what their American dream looks like. I'd really want art to be like really integrated in politics, and maybe even like changing like the like Capitol buildings and adding more like paintings to the insides, like little things like that. I think could make a really big difference and make people more receptive to change and more receptive to collaboration with one another.
So are you planning to go to Washington, D.C.?
I don't know. I think I would want to eventually at some point make my way down to Washington, D.C.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You could still become a senator.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Anyone else? Have you ever read On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder?
I have not, no.
I suggest it.
Okay.
Oh,
What's the name of that book again?
On Tyranny?
I'll look into it.
Yeah. Well, does anybody else have any comments or questions? Okay, well, we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. Thank you so much, Diya. It was a really amazing presentation. Your work is very sophisticated and inspiring, and thank you so much for sharing yourself and your work with us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.